Welcome, students. I am Nancy Southerland. I am eager to begin the discussion of Chapter 3, Cultural Influences. Chapter 3 discusses the role of overall culture in affecting consumer behavior. As I begin my lecture, I would like to cover the learning objectives of Chapter 3. A culture is a society's personality. It shapes our identities as individuals. Our deeply held cultural values dictate the types of products and services we seek out or avoid. We distinguish between high culture and low culture. Many modern marketers are reality engineers. Further objectives are as follows. Myths are stories that express a culture's values. And in modern times, marketing messages convey these values. Many of our consumption activities include holiday observances, grooming, and gift-giving, or rituals. We describe products as either sacred or profane. The last objectives of Chapter 3 are: products that succeed in one culture may fail in another if marketers fail to understand the differences among consumers in each place. Western, and particularly American culture, has a huge impact around the world, although people in other countries don't necessarily ascribe the same meanings to products as we do. The first learning objective sets the stage for our understanding of culture. We simply can't understand consumption unless we understand its cultural context. Culture is like a lens through which people view products. Culture includes abstract ideals such as values and ethics and material objects like cars and clothing. It's the shared meaning of our rituals, norms, and traditions among members of a society or organization. The effects of culture on consumer behavior can be so powerful that it's sometimes difficult to grasp the importance and relevance of culture. We typically notice cultural effects the most when we are immersed in a different one and feel the effects of a culture shock. Consumers are more likely to want products that resonate with a culture's priority at a given time. The slide lists some examples of products that became successful because they reflected the dominant values at the time. Culture is not static. It continually evolves. Old ideals are merged with new ones. A cultural system consists of three functional areas as noted in the slide. Ecology refers to the way a system adapts to its habitat. The technology a culture uses to obtain and distribute resources shapes its ecology. Social structure refers to the way people maintain an orderly social life. This includes the domestic and political groups that dominate the culture. Ideology refers to the mental characteristics of a people and the way they relate to their environment and social groups. This relates to the ideal of a common worldview. Members of a culture tend to share ideas about principles of order and fairness. Students, I want us to do a reflection exercise. If your culture were a person, how would you describe its personality traits? Now, select another culture you're familiar with. How would those personality traits differ from your own? Students, a value is a belief that some condition is preferable to its opposite. In some cases, values are universal. We all value health, wisdom, and peace. What sets cultures apart is the relative importance of these universal values. This set of rankings constitutes a culture's value system. It is usually possible to identify a general set of core values that uniquely define a culture. Core values such as freedom, youthfulness, achievement, materialism, and activity characterize American culture. The process of learning the beliefs and behaviors endorsed by one's own culture enculturation. We call the process of learning the value system and behaviors of another culture acculturation. Crescent norms we discover as we interact with others, and these include customs, mores, and conventions. A custom is a norm that controls basic behaviors, such as the division of labor in a household. A more is a custom with a strong moral overtone. It may involve something that is taboo or forbidden, like cannibalism. Conventions are norms that regulate how we conduct our everyday lives. They may be subtle, like how we furnish a room or what we wear to a dinner party. Students, the psychologist Milton Rokeach identified terminal values, which are desired end states. The Rokeach Value Survey also identified instrumental values, which are those actions we need to take to achieve these terminal values. Table 3.1 lists several instrumental values and their corresponding terminal values. The list of values, LOV scale, isolates values with more direct marketing applications. This instrument identifies 9 consumer segments based on the values members endorse. The means end chain model assumes that people link very specific product attributes indirectly to terminal values. A technique researchers call laddering uncovers consumer associations between specific attributes and these general consequences. The ladder connects abstract concepts to functional product attributes. A number of companies track changes in values through large-scale surveys. Mainstream culture often modifies symbols from subcultures so that larger audiences can consume them. Culture creates meaning, and then meaning moves through society. Mainstream culture can modify symbols associated with subcultures so that they are appealing to larger audiences. This is known as co-optation. It means that outsiders transform the original meanings of the objects. Cultural meanings can be created from everyday products, and these meanings then move through society. The figure shows that advertising and fashion play a key role in this process. Sometimes we might feel that we have too many choices, but really, at any point in time, we might actually have just a small fraction of the total set of possibilities. The figure shows that when we select certain alternatives over others, our choice actually is the only culmination of a complex filtration process that resembles a funnel. Possibilities compete for adoption, but then most drop out as they make their way down the path from conception to consumption. This winnowing process is called cultural selection. Even though inner-city teens represent only 8% of all people in that age group and have incomes lower than their white suburban counterparts, their influence on young people's music and fashion taste is great. Popular culture can arise from many sources and become symbolically connected to others. No single person or company can create popular culture. Instead, many people and organizations contribute to each new trend. A culture production system is the set of people and organizations who create cultural meaning. The system has three major subsystems. The creative subsystem generates new symbols and products. The managerial subsystem selects, makes, produces, and manages the distribution of new products and symbols. A communication subsystem gives meaning to the new product and provides it with a symbolic set of attributes. Though culture can create popularity for high and low art, and for arts and crafts, there are some basic distinctions. A piece of art is original, subtle, and valuable, and it is typically associated with society's elite. A craft tends to follow a formula that permits rapid production. Mass culture seeks to please the average taste of the average audience. Many popular art forms follow a sort of formula for success. Students, I would like for us to do a reflection exercise. How have cultural values influenced the items that you feel have value? This ad follows the cultural formula of a horror movie poster. Reality engineering occurs when marketers appropriate elements of popular culture and use them as promotional vehicles. Product placements are an example. The use of branded products in film is an old practice, but it has renewed attention as brands pay large sums to be included in popular programming. Sometimes the product placement is free because the director wants to use the branded prop for realism. Other times the placement comes with a fee. The practice is called branded entertainment, sometimes because the brands may sponsor the program, like American Idol. Some researchers claim that product placement helps consumers to make decisions because consumers are then familiar with the brands when they shop. However, others say that placements can be a negative influence on consumers' decisions if they are not congruent with the plot. In other words, the placement has to make sense in the minds of the consumers in order to be effective. Many brands have used Advergaming, including Axe, Burger King, and Mini Cooper. The games keep the attention of players longer than typical advertising. They let marketers target specific types of consumers. Marketers can tailor the nature of the game and the products in it to the profiles of different users. The format gives advertisers a great deal of flexibility. Lastly, the game enables marketers to track exposure to advertising in the games. Students, I ask that you engage in the discussion of Learning Objective 5. Myths are stories that express a culture's value, and in modern times, marketing messages convey these values. Every culture develops stories and ceremonies that helps its members to make sense of the world. A myth is a story with symbolic elements that represents a culture's ideals. The story often focuses on some kind of conflict between two opposing forces, and its outcome serves as a moral guide for listeners. Most of us know a variety of myths that we grew up hearing, but we may not know their origins. Typically, myths came about to serve as a guide for listeners. From hearing the story, we can learn right from wrong and how to deal with wrong when we face it. The origins of myths can be surprising. For instance, the original Little Red Riding Hood told the story of a girl who meets a werewolf on the way to her granny's house. The werewolf has killed Granny and stored her flesh and blood. Red Riding Hood snacks on Granny's remains and then sleeps with the wolf. Some versions even suggest that Wolf was Grandpa. Thus, Little Red Riding Hood is a myth that guides the reader from partaking in incest and loose behavior. Myths serve 4 interrelated functions in a culture. These are noted on the slide. Myths are very popular. One example is the popularity of Disney weddings. Brides dress as princesses and ride to the wedding pavilion in horse-drawn carriages complete with footmen. Some fictional figures embody such fundamental properties that they become a monomyth. A monomyth is a myth that is common to many cultures. For instance, Superman is a monomyth. Many famous movies and television shows build on mythic themes. Gone with the Wind builds upon the romance of war and illustrates a lost era where man and nature existed in harmony. E.T. represents a messianic visitation. Star Trek builds on the story of New England Puritans who explored the final frontier. Even ads can represent mythic themes. Students, I would ask to focus on reflection at this moment. Identify modern-day myths that corporations create. How do they communicate these stories to consumers? Let us examine Learning Objective 6. Many of our consumption activities, including holiday observances, grooming, and gift-giving, are rituals. Rituals are sets of multiple symbolic behaviors that occur in a fixed sequence and that tend to be repeated periodically. When you hear the word ritual, you may think of something formal and serious like the ritual of taking communion at church. In reality, consumers have many ritualistic activities. Having Sunday brunch, going daily to Starbucks, and tailgating before football games are examples of commonplace rituals. Many of our ongoing traditions contain rituals. For instance, when you get ready for work or school each day, you'll likely have things you always do as a part of getting ready. In giving gifts, you may have rituals. For instance, you might always give a certain type of gift or card. During the holidays, families typically have set rituals for who will start the meal and so on. Lastly, during rites of passage like weddings and graduations, we typically have rituals we follow. Gift giving has 3 distinct stages. During gestation, the giver procures an item to mark some event. The event might be structural, meaning that it is culturally dictated, such as Christmas, or it may be emergent. The second stage is presentation, which is the actual stage of gift exchange. The final stage is reformulation, in which the giver and receiver redefine the bond of the relationship based on the impact of the gift exchange. Students, I would ask us to engage in reflection this moment. Explain some of your own family holiday traditions. How do they affect your behavior as consumers? One study found that Valentine's has 5 familiar rituals, including exchanging gifts, showing affection, going out, preparing and consuming food and drink, and dressing up. What rituals are associated with the holidays you usually spend with your family? A rite of passage consists of 3 phases. The first phase is separation. In this phase, the consumer distances him or herself from the past. The middle stage is liminality, which represents a limbo stage. The final stage is aggregation. Students, I will now begin to discuss Learning Objective 7. We describe products as either sacred or profane, and it's not unusual for some products to move back and forth between 2 categories. Thus, many types of consumer activities involve the opposition of categories such as good and bad, male and female, and regular and diet. We can also differentiate between the sacred and profane when considering our cultural consumption patterns. Sacred consumption occurs when we set apart objects and events from normal activities and treat them with respect and awe. Note that sacred in this case does not mean religious. Profane consumption describes objects and events that are ordinary and everyday. They are not special like sacred objects. For instance, a wedding dress is sacred, but a dress for work is profane. Anything can become sacred. Troy Aikman's shoes sold for nearly $2,000 because fans had turned the shoes from the profane to the sacred. Contamination just means that the objects we associate with sacred events become sacred in their own right. For instance, we use ornaments and lights to celebrate the sacred event of Christmas, and these ornaments may become sacred. Some people collect things that are sacred to them. Anything can be collected, it seems. Collecting involves a rational and an emotional component. Some researchers feel that collectors acquire their collections to gratify materialism in a socially acceptable way. This slide shows a picture of Stonehenge. This is viewed as a sacred place. Other sacred places are Mecca as well as Ground Zero in New York City. Certain people such as Jesus Christ and religious ceremonies can also be thought sacred. Tourism is an example of a sacred experience. People occupy sacred time and space when they travel on vacation. The desire of travelers to capture these sacred experiences and objects is the basis for the souvenir industry. In addition to personal mementos, there are several common types of sacred souvenir icons. Just as objects can shift from the profane to sacred, they can shift from the sacred to the profane. There are numerous examples, including reproductions of sacred symbols like the American flag on a t-shirt or the image of Mona Lisa. Students, I would like us to pull back into reflection. Give examples of items that were once sacred but are now materialized and marketed. What are the implications in the shift in reverence to the items in question? I now begin the discussion of Learning Objective 8. Products that succeed in one culture may fail in another if marketers fail to understand the differences among consumers in each place. This section emphasizes the importance of understanding consumer culture in geographic areas and highlights some ways companies have leveraged regional culture. Brands must decide whether their marketing strategies will be adapted for local markets, localization strategy, or be standardized global strategy. The standardized strategy focuses on commonalities across cultures and is called an etic perspective. Localized strategies follow an emic perspective, which emphasizes the variations from culture to culture. I do want you to remember, however, that a Coke is a Coke worldwide and that McDonald's is McDonald's worldwide. Students, I want us to now begin the discussion of Learning Objective 9. Western and particularly American culture has a huge impact around the world. Although people in other countries don't necessarily ascribe the same meanings to products as we do. Around the world, American brands are popular. McDonald's, Levi's, and the National Basketball Association are examples. Hofstede's dimensions are among the most widely used measures for understanding cross-cultural values. Power distance is the extent to which the less powerful members of organizations and institutions like the family accept and expect that power is distributed unequally. Individualism is the degree to which individuals are integrated into groups. Masculinity is the distribution of roles between the genders. Uncertainty avoidance is a society's tolerance for uncertainty and ambiguity. Long-term association refers to values associated with long-term orientation and are thrift and perseverance. Values associated with short-term orientation are respect for tradition, fulfilling social obligations, and protecting one's face. Indulgence versus restraint is the extent to which a society allows relatively free gratification of basic and natural human drives related to enjoying life and fun. A culture high on restraint suppresses gratifications of needs and regulates it by means of strict social norms. We covered many concepts related to culture and consumer behavior in this chapter. We learned the meaning of culture. We studied how values matter to consumers. We discussed the differences in high and low culture. We saw how marketers can use culture, especially in product placements and advergames. Thus, I provide again the chapter's learning objectives. A culture is a society's personality. It shapes our identities as individuals. Our deeply held cultural values dictate the types of products and services we seek out or avoid. We distinguish between high culture and low culture. Many modern marketers are reality engineers. We learned how stories and rituals influence our buying behavior. Myths are stories that express a culture's value, and in modern times, marketing messages convey these values. Many of our consumption activities include holiday observances, grooming, and gift-giving are rituals. We describe products as either sacred or profane. We saw how global culture influences our consumer choices. Products that succeed in one culture may fail in another if marketers fail to understand the differences among consumers in each place. Western culture has a huge impact around the world, although people in other countries don't necessarily ascribe the same meanings to products as we do. Thank you for listening to the lecture of Consumer Behavior Chapter 3, entitled Cultural Influences on Decision Making. I am Nancy Southerland. I am eager to engage you.